Ready to go? Good morning, good evening, good night to everyone all around the world, in the US, in Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, wherever you are. What should I say but shalom? Wherever you are, peace is what we all desire, we all seek. This morning, first of all, let me introduce myself again. I am Dr. Wendy Crenshaw. And I give thanks to Pastor Elnora for this very gracious invitation to share some things with you this morning regarding a very important topic in the heart and life of every woman, and that's fertility. But it's not just fertility, it's fertility with faith. And so today I am going to build a foundation of the natural world, how fertility works, because it all comes together in our bodies. Without us, there's no such thing. So we'll build a foundation in the human body, in the female body, and then we'll see how God established it from the very beginning, and then where things went off, so that the end result is not what we get. And our hearts are sad, frustrated, and so forth. So let's go before the Lord before we get started. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you so much for the spirit of wisdom, for knowledge and understanding. In these days, in these times, you're opening up our understanding so we know what is going on around us, what's going on in us and through us. And then we understand, and beyond that, we have wisdom in knowing what to do, when to do it, how to intercept things, how to handle these issues that we face. So I give you thanks, Lord. Father God, let your word come forth from my mouth as it is your word, by your spirit. It is you speaking to your daughters. It's you speaking to the women of God all around the world this morning, and I am your humble vessel. I am very honored and blessed and grateful to be given this assignment. It's an assignment you gave me a long time ago, and I continue to walk in it, hopefully with grace and with faith, to fulfill what is the desire of your heart. So Lord, bless us all this morning as we look into the mysteries of womanhood, and the lights turn on, and you reveal what you want us to know in Jesus' name. So thank you, Heavenly Father. Thank you. God bless us all this morning. So the great question is, what is fertility? What is fertility? What does it mean to be fertile? Well, fertility depends on who you ask. It depends on who you ask. If you ask a farmer, he says that my land will reproduce. And every farmer knows that the ground has to be fertile. He knows the difference between fertile ground and arid ground that won't produce anything. All right, you plant corn and a couple of them come up, not much. You don't have a harvest. So fertile means that seed is planted and a harvest comes at the end. So that is what a farmer will say. If he is a rancher and he's raising sheep, raising cattle, raising chickens, pigs, then he'll say fertility is at the end of the season, his flocks reproduce, multiplied. If he started out with 100, next year at the calving season, he has a lot of new cows born, a lot of new sheep, a lot of new pigs, a lot of new goats, whatever. So it's a reproduction. So fertility is about reproduction, and it is a reproduction of life of all sorts. Okay, so where did this all come from? Why is it why is it even necessary that we should reproduce life? Well, let's go to the beginning, where it all started as far as we are concerned. And I say as far as we are concerned because things had been going on before we came onto the picture. So we'll just start from where we're concerned. And I'm going to take us back to Genesis chapter 1. And we all know the story of what was happening. We need a clock. We all know the story in Genesis. He says in the beginning, so God created the heavens and the earth, but then the heavens and the earth became, the earth became shapeless, unrecognizable, and empty, void. Void means empty. And empty of what? Empty of life. Empty of life. There was no life in the earth. So the big question is, why did that all happen? Well, that's another time. But the world was empty of life. And the Lord came in as light and the word, and he spoke. And he spoke, and the first thing he did, as you go through Genesis 1, chapter 1, is it's a total planet reorg. He took the chaos of the planet Earth and started changing it, putting it back, restoring it to what he wanted it. The planet was in chaos. It was dark. It was dark. There was no light. And the appearance was unrecognizable. Today, our astronauts, when they are up on the surface of the moon, or we're up in the space station, they are breathless when they look at the planet Earth. They say, it is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. And it's recognizable. You go to a movie and a sci-fi movie, and they're from outer space, and when they're coming to Earth, they've reached Earth. You can see it. It is recognizable. But in Genesis chapter 1, it was unrecognizable. It was black, dark, covered with this black fog. So God had to come in and clean it all up. All the moms listening to me understand, when you walk into your kid's room, you got to clean it up because it's a mess. Cleaning up, God started it all. Okay, so I'm going to skip down. So he goes through the 6 days. 959. He goes through the 6 days of, see it? All right. 6 days of reorganization. And before he brought the life, he had to restore the atmosphere. He had to restore the surface of the earth. He had to get the spiritual darkness out of the place and bring spiritual light, which is the Lord Jesus himself. He is the light of the world. So he came first. And then the reorganization took place. So we move all the way through, and we get down to verse 26. And then he says, let's make man. Before he made man, he made the sea creatures, the air creatures, so the birds, the land creatures, the vegetation. He made everything prepared ahead of time before he said, now let us make man in our image according to our likeness, give him dominion over everything, over the birds, the fish, the cattle, the earth itself. Dominion, not domination, dominion, rulership. Take care of it. You're in charge, all right? And then he created man in his own image. He made man like himself, not only in appearance, but in function, in abilities, okay? And he said, and in verse 28, he blessed them and then gave them a mandate and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply. Not only man, but the whole planet, all the vegetation, all the animals, everything was given instruction from the Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Put it under your control it. Fill the earth. In other places it said refill the earth. Refill it. All right. Bring it back to the fullness it once had. That had gone away. Bring it back, fill it again, but in a new way, okay? And have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, every living thing that moves on the earth. So all life, he gave dominion of life to mankind. All right. And he said it was good. But after that, he says, let us give man a female, a partner that is similar to him. Okay, give him a partner that is similar to him. And he took from man and created and made from man with the same material that man was, made a woman. And she was called woman, which means from man, or in other places they say man with a womb, wombed man. Okay? And when that man saw the woman that God made, he just loved her right from the start. She was beautiful to look at, and he was connected. He had an immediate connection of his soul to her, so that he said, "Oh, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." And then he named her. He said that she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. She's taken out of me. That taken out of man in nature, in farming, is called propagation. You take a whole creature, cut a piece of it, and put it in the soil, and it grows. It's propagation without seed. Just the life of the flesh takes hold in the earth. That's what God did with making woman from man. But he said to the both of them, now he says, now here's what you two of you are going to do. Oh, Netgear. Do you see Netgear? Yeah. He said, now here's how it's going to work. Here's how you're going to work. You're going to become one flesh. The two shall become one flesh. That the man shall be joined with his wife, and the two. That is a mystery. That is a mystery. That two shall become one flesh. Well, over the years, we found so many details of how that happens. But in the very beginning, all they knew was that the man and the women came together in intercourse, and all the things that led up to that intercourse. And the first thing was that physical attraction. The physical attraction. He looked at her and he saw she was beautiful. And he wanted to draw her to himself. He drew her to himself. He held on to her. He hugged her and looked at her face, touched her face, and said, oh my God, she's beautiful. She is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. She is from me. That is one of the essentials of man and wife, husband and wife relationship, that the man sees that woman as a part of himself. Not a stranger to him, not an invader, not something from the outside, but she is part of him. Okay? And so that's why Adam says, she's flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. She's a part of me. And so the first thing he wants to do is bring her to himself. And in time, and that drawing to yourself was not just a sexual thing. It was a communion. It was communication. It was dwelling together, ideas, doing things together, thinking, having the same ideas, thinking one heart and one mind, being in unity together. That is ordained by God. And later on, we find out more and more in the in the history of mankind, how that has been divided and pulled apart so much that we are at utmost war with each other, instead of one loving the other, drawing close to the other, and so on. But that war is necessary to keep us from refilling the earth. Keep us at war with each other. We don't want to be together. We don't refill the earth. We are not fertile. We're not fruitful. We do not multiply. We do not fulfill God's command. So relationship matters are key. It's the first thing before the physical interaction even takes place. The relationship and the wellness of the relationship and the recognition of what a holy thing it is. Without that, we two shall surely not be one flesh. Okay, so now that is the beginning of the natural, how this natural thing of man and woman, two becoming one, leads to reproduction. And like I said, this morning we're just going to deal with the physical aspects of it, because there's a lot of questions and concerns about something is wrong. Why is my body not doing what it was designed to do? And that is both for men and women. In previous times, we thought it was only the woman having a problem that led to the lack of childbearing. But we've discovered, through scientific investigation, it's both sides can have problems that lead to barrenness or infertility. Okay, so we call it female infertility, we call it male infertility. This morning we'll touch on the males as well, because it's important to know it. So fertility is reproduction, reproducing new life, and it was the mandate, it was the instruction from the Father, from God, at the beginning of the whole reset of our planet, which is have dominion and replenish the earth, fill it with life. At the beginning of Genesis, it is empty, and it's void, meaning empty of life. There was earth, there was water, plenty of water, but no life. We have plenty of water, but the waters are full of life. But in that time, there was no life. It was essentially a dead planet. But God's desire is for this planet to be full of life. Okay? So now, what do we do? Male, female, and he said he made them, not only mankind, but the creatures as well, male and female. He made them male, so that the male and the female are required to become one to make a new life. Even in the plants, there are some flowers have both the male and the female parts that will lead for pollination and fruit. In some plants, one has a male flower and the other has a female flower, and they have to exchange parts in order to bear fruitfulness. So that male and female establishment is by God and cannot be abrogated. As much as we are trying to undo it, we can't. We can't. It takes male and female in every case. In every case. Okay? So now, in humanity, the men, bear what's called the seed, the sperm. Live sperm. They are one cell with a nucleus and a little tail. Okay? And their job is to travel. They travel out of the man's reproductive tract into the woman's reproductive tract, and they've got some swimming to do to reach the place where the woman's egg is waiting and ready to be fertilized for conception to take place. If there is anything that interferes with the ability of those sperm to swim, to travel, any obstruction, any blockage, anything that fights them, destroys them, then they will not work. And the man may desire to sire children, to have children, but if his sperm are not functioning properly, if they're not formed properly, if they don't swim properly, if there's not enough of them, then there will be a problem, male infertility. And we have found ways to overcome that with artificial insemination, even in vitro fertilization. Okay, so those are big words. But today, most people know what those mean. To inseminate is to take the sperm from the man, put it into a syringe and a tiny tube, and insert it all the way up into the woman's uterus, into her womb. So it's basically, it's like giving the sperm a jump, getting them to their destination faster without the obstructions that they may encounter in the lower part of the woman's tract. Okay, that's a help. In vitro fertilization is that sperm is brought into a petri dish, and the egg is sitting in the petri dish, and you they you know they spill the sperm into the petri dish with the egg, and under the microscope you can see the activity taking place, and you can see one sperm manages to penetrate the membrane around the egg and inject its chromosomes into the egg, and the two become one. Two become one, and a new thing is begun, which, if left allowed to function normally, it will lead to a new life. Okay? So, male infertility, the male factors are very important. Production of male sperm, traveling of the sperm, placed in the right place is all important. Okay? Let's deal with the female. The female system is very complex, very, very complex. And it is part of God's way of hiding, protecting, keeping those very important components of reproduction inside the woman's body, where it is protected. It is protected. It is not easily observed. Once a pregnancy is well established and growing, that's when the whole community knows, she's having a baby, because her belly is getting bigger. And so, but in the early parts, it's a secret thing. It's a secret thing. It's a secret that the woman can keep to herself for a few months before she even tells anybody. But nowadays, we can tell a pregnancy has begun very, very early. Scientifically, we can tell. And with Facebook, people tell the story very early. And sometimes I say, ladies, be quiet, wait. Wait, enjoy the blessing of carrying the mystery and the miracle of life inside you before everybody else jumps on board and has something to say. So, the female egg is produced in the ovary. We have a pair of ovaries, one on the left, one on the right. And the ovaries have a timing, a clock. There's an internal clock on those ovaries, and that clock is manipulated by the brain, by a small gland inside the brain called the pituitary gland. And that gland sends messages to the ovaries every month to tell the ovaries it's time to prepare the eggs, and when to release it, and then when to stop and hold and wait to see if something happens with it. So there is a communication, and this is the part that everybody gets all excited about, and what we call the hormones. Now today, hormones in common vernacular means I'm crazy. My hormones are going on and I'm crazy. No. Your hormones are the messengers that are moving from one part of your body to the other to give a message to the other part of the body to do something for a period of time, when to do it, how long to do it, and when to stop. Those are hormones. But yes, when they are flowing up and down, some parts of the brain do react, do respond, and so emotional ups and downs may take place. But people curse their hormones. Pray that your hormones are functioning and that you have them. Because if there's a problem in the pituitary gland in the brain, and those hormones are not working, they're not being released, they're not responding to the messages that are coming from the lower part of the body, from the ovaries, from the uterus, from other parts of, if they're not responsive, that's a primary infertility, meaning your system is not listening to itself and not responding, and so nothing's happening. And so often these will be women who don't have regular monthly cycles. They don't have regular periods. They don't know where they are in the month. They don't know what's going on. It's because the communication is shut off. It's like, not having Wi-Fi in your house. Then you can't get on the internet. The internet is there. Messages are going back and forth. You're just not getting it because you don't have a Wi-Fi connection. Well, we have an internal Wi-Fi. It's called the pituitary gland. That's the browser. No, that's not the browser. What's that called, Ebony? The modem. That's your modem. It's what's in the center of your brain, and it's picking up messages from all over the body, and it's sending out messages, and it's telling the heart, it's telling the thyroid gland, it's telling the adrenals, it's telling all different parts of your body what to do and when, how to respond, and for how long, and how intense, and how not. So if that function is not at work, then your ability to reproduce is shut off. That's primary infertility. It's from the brain itself. The next step down is supposing the brain is working, but the ovaries are not listening. The modem's working, but the receiver is not working. It's not picking it up. Something is wrong. What did they tell you on your TV? Say, check and see if your modem is on, and check and see if you're plugged in. Well, here's what happens with your ovaries. Sometimes they are not able to respond. It's like they're deaf or they're hard of hearing. They're not hearing well. They're not picking up the message well, so they don't respond well. So that monthly cycle of readiness of what we call the fertile period is not happening. It's not predictable. You can't identify. You can't see. So the ovaries are malfunctioning for one reason or another. So that has to be investigated and find out what it is. There is a ovarian dysfunction that has become so common so much in the last few years before I retired from medicine. I was alarmed at how many young women were having this, irregular menstrual cycles, and we discovered it was the ovaries were not functioning. Their timing was off, and we call it polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. And at the heart of it, the ovaries were not responding to the pituitary gland. And the gland keeps on pumping and pumping and pumping, it's like it's shouting, sending out more hormonal messages to stir it up, but the ovaries they're not responding, or they'll respond irregularly. So that's another case for infertility on the woman's side, because her system is not set up, is not responsive. All right, what about if the system is responsive, the eggs are there, the ovaries are listening when the brain says, get them ready, and the ovary is doing what it's supposed to, what they're supposed to, because we have two in a pair. But the next step is that egg has to be released at the right time, and they are released at the right time. Well, what happens next? She has sex, she has intercourse, but the eggs have to travel from the ovary through a passageway that brings them into the womb. And so that passageway has to be clean and healthy and functional. That's called the fallopian tubes. So the fallopian tubes have to be it's like a freeway with no traffic. It's got to have no traffic in there. Just shoot through, travel through, clean and clear. But sometimes that freeway has had hurricane, let's say, and all the trees are falling down across the freeway. No traffic can pass. There's obstruction. There's blockage. Okay, there's blockage. And if that blockage is bad enough, that tiny egg, even though it's coming out at the right time and it's headed in the right direction, it can't get through. So it's stuck. It's stuck at the place of the obstruction, and it can't get through. But it only has a couple of days of life. That's why timing is so critical. So it's there for only a couple of days, and after those 2 or 3 days, it's gone. It dissolves. It dissolves. So the period will come because the ovaries are doing their part, so they're regulating the cycle, but no pregnancy. So after no pregnancy, what's going on? So now we know how to check to see, are the tubes clear? Are they obstructed? How bad is the obstructed? Can we relieve the obstruction? Can we unblock it? What can we do to get things back on track? So tubal obstruction, tubal disease can prevent pregnancy, even when everything else seems to be working fine. What kind of tubal disease? The most prevalent form of tubal obstruction is caused by infection. Caused by infection. In different parts of the world, it's different things, but it's infection. And those infections are sexually transmitted infection. Pathogens that were deposited in the woman's vagina traveled up and went all the way up into her uterus and then into her tubes and stayed there and produced foul, damaging disease in her fallopian tubes, sometimes even as well as in the uterus itself. It is a consequence of things that happen to us either by our own choosing or inflicted on us some time ago. The sexually transmitted diseases will do that. In some places, you'll hear about chlamydia, you'll hear about gonorrhea, you'll hear about, even in some places, tuberculosis of the tubes will cause that kind of damage. So it's important, if a woman feels that she's got an infection, it's important to go and get checked and treated as quickly as possible to prevent the long-term damage to her system, particularly infection in the fallopian tubes, infection inside the uterus that makes the uterus a hostile environment. When the egg and the sperm get there, they're damaged, they're killed by that hostile bacteria, and so no pregnancy, no fertility, no fruitfulness, no new life, no reproduction. All right. What about when everything goes well? The sperm are healthy, the egg is healthy, the tubes are open, the uterus is healthy, the uterus has been prepared. One of the things that those hormones do, not only do they tell the ovaries to get ready to release the eggs, they also tell the uterus to prepare to receive the fertilized egg. It's like producing a cushion or a mattress of tissue that produces water, sugar, salt, vitamins inside the uterus, so that fertilized egg has food, has nourishment to keep it alive, and it allows it to attach and develop the embryo and develop the pregnancy, which is part fetus, membranes around it, placenta, the attachment to the woman's womb. That is the place where there's an exchange of information between mother and child, an exchange of food and byproducts, an exchange of toxic material. So if the mother has toxic material in her circulation, it will pass through the placenta to the mother and pass through the placenta to the baby, harm the baby. Well, if it's bad enough, what will happen? It may kill the baby. Guess what? Miscarriage, stillbirth, no live birth, no reproduction, great grief and sorrow. So you get pregnant, but that pregnancy can be challenged by the environment that the woman produces, knowingly or unknowingly. Knowingly, sometimes we know, but we are terribly in bondage to some things, and we keep doing it, and we pay the price in the loss of our children. And other times we don't know. We don't know that that's what will happen. When I was in training, a long time ago, fetal alcohol syndrome was the big monster on the market for the pediatricians. because women who were drinking heavily during their pregnancy gave birth to babies that were awfully afflicted. They came out addicted to alcohol. They cried. These babies cried. They cried and cried and cried because they went through withdrawal in the nursery. And it was horrible to hear the anguish and the pain of these little babies. But we learned that. We learned by seeing what the result was, fetal alcohol. So now we tell women, don't drink any alcohol at all the moment you know you're pregnant. But the fact of the matter is, there's a level at which, it doesn't hurt. But it's the alcoholism, which is the excess in everything. Excess and deficiency, the two ends of the spectrum, is what gets us into trouble. So yes, we say don't drink anything. And you know what? It's worthwhile to follow that, because we have seen the effect of the fetus of a child by the mother's alcohol drinking. But there are other things that we do. Drugs. I've seen babies on born to mothers on cocaine, crack cocaine. Oh God, it's a wonder those babies survived. That pregnancy is challenged because the mother's system, which is designed to support life in its nascent stage while that baby's developing, but the system becomes chaotic with hypertension. It becomes chaotic with abnormal antibodies. Oh my God, the liver starts to break down, the kidneys start to break down, and the mother's body, which is supposed to be the safe haven for the development of life, her body becomes a hostile environment. And so we have to intervene. And some babies have to be delivered early, because if they stayed in the womb longer, they would likely die. We had to intervene, and we did so with tears, because we were afraid, is this baby going to live when it's only 27 weeks, 28 weeks, 30 weeks? So we tried, and we learned how to support those babies. We learned how to keep them alive. We learned a lot of things about what works to sustain life and what doesn't. But what did God say? What did God say? Be fruitful and multiply. That's it. So we had to find all kinds of backdoor, side door ways to be fruitful and multiply, because our natural apparatus that He gave us was malfunctioning. Dysfunctions were coming into the human family, and barrenness became a word. Infertility became a word. But when we go through the scripture, we find out God had a way of fixing those things. And we didn't know, those people didn't know the details of how it got fixed. All they knew is, now a woman who hadn't had any children for so many years, now she has a child. And then after that had more. So pregnancy itself is a special time. It's a special time, but it's challenged. It's opposed. Things are going on to make pregnancy itself become a challenging time for the life of the woman that's carrying a baby. I have seen women die. Not in my practice, by the way. They were prevented from doing that because I was a praying doctor. God gave me eyes to see, and I would pray for my patients, whether they knew God or not. But pregnancy, each phase, each stage, we call them trimesters. The first trimester is the first 3.5 months of pregnancy. Very, very delicate time. So much is going on, so much changing, so much growth. We're identifying that there is life. You can hear a heartbeat. You can see a heartbeat with ultrasound by 6 weeks along. All right. And it's a very anxious time for many women. They can't wait to hear that baby's heartbeat. And it's interesting. I find that sometimes, because of the development of our technology, many women no longer have faith. They rely on the technology. They don't trust anymore. They don't believe until they see it. Then there's no belief. There's no faith. Our mothers, they didn't have that technology, so they had to believe and trust God and so forth. So it's the more we learn, the more we know it's good. But in many cases, we abandon faith. We abandon faith. We don't listen to what God said anymore. We wait for Dr. Crenshaw to tell us, and then we'll know. Oh my goodness. All right, childbirth, another challenging time. Labor, travail. Everybody knows that word on WAI. Travail. It's labor, it's a work, and it is the most challenging work of your life and most gratifying when it's over. Because now the body is doing what it needs to do to bring that child out of your body. Bring the baby out of your body. And oh my God, how many things can take place to interrupt it? How many things? You know, when we read in the Bible about Jesus and the man that was, he says what? He was lame from his mother's womb. He was lame from it. He was born lame. Today, we know what makes that lameness a paralysis. Today, we call it cerebral palsy. Today, now we know what things can lead. We can tell when a woman is in labor, what's going on with the baby's heartbeat, what's going on if the mother's developing a fever, if her heartbeat is rising. We know something, an infection is taking place, and it is going to attack that baby's brain, and it's going to end up with that baby having cerebral palsy. So now we intervene. We do something to get that delivery quicker. Sometimes we do a cesarean section because we can't wait anymore. But it's to give that baby a chance at a normal life. So many decisions have to be made along the way. So much alertness to what is going on. You know, you hear about, when you read about the birth of Jacob and Esau. First of all, during the pregnancy, Rebecca said, what is going on? There's a war going on in my belly, because she could see her belly going up and down like that. And the Lord told her, she says, you got twins. Everybody is excited about twins, but we have to understand the challenge of a twin pregnancy. But the Lord said back in Genesis, you'll have multiple conceptions. Twins, triplets, quadruplets are in there. It's tough enough carrying 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. At every step of the way, there's a challenge that may end in the mother's life or the baby's life. Things can go wrong. In Genesis, they delivered those babies. They didn't have a problem. Today, we have challenges, and scientifically, we've learned how to anticipate them, how to treat them, so we have a good outcome. We have a good outcome. But every step of the way, I must tell you this, I'm running out, I have 2 more minutes left. Every step of the way, if we are not looking to God to help us through, then the challenge will be bigger, scarier, worse than we would ever like to tell anyone. I myself faced one of those challenges when I was giving birth to my first child. I tell you really quickly. I was overdue, 2 weeks overdue. And my body was not doing what it's supposed to do to prepare for childbirth. But my doctor knew 2 weeks overdue, that placenta is going downhill. Its ability to exchange food and oxygen and nutrition to the baby is going down. So she said, okay, well, let's induce labor. So admitted me to the hospital and started a labor induction. And I went through 36 hours of induction. I will always remember the anesthesiologist who gave me an epidural. I will always remember, I'll always bless him because he relieved my anguish and my pain. But then labor is not progressing, my cervix is not opening enough, etc., etc. And finally, my doctor said, Wendy, I don't want to wait anymore. The baby's heart rate is going up and you're starting to develop a fever. And she said, I'm going to do a C-section. I said, yes, let's do it. Hurry up. And my baby was born by a C-section. And oh, the love and the joy to see that child is indescribable. She's my firstborn. All right. But by the time the second pregnancy came along, I learned some things that I didn't know before. And I knew how to talk to my father about what's going on in my body. And so he said, you're going to have this baby normally. And sure enough, I did. He was a bigger baby, but that labor was horrible, but quick. And I screamed at the nurses when they said, no, you can't push. I said, I'm pushing because he's coming. She said, you're only 5 centimeters. I said, I don't care. He's coming. I'm pushing. And sure enough, he came. Beautiful, beautiful baby. So what does that say? That whatever issues, whatever troubles we encounter, God has a way to help us. But we have to tap in with him. We have to cooperate with him. And he helps us. He'll show me something and then he'll show you something else. That's the key about having that personal relationship with him. He won't do the same thing with everybody. Otherwise, what? It's a recipe. It's a cookbook. He's not a cookbook daddy. But he does have some principles that he stands by. So, my sisters, friends, ladies, women of God, today we begin a journey, and we've shared about the natural things that are involved in childbearing, in fertility, and basically in reproduction, in bringing forth new life, and knowing that new life, reproduction, is given to the entire planet, all over the world, not just humanity, the animals, the creatures, the plants, the grass, the worms, everybody is expected to reproduce, fill the planet with life. That was the mandate of God. But we find that there is an enemy at work to stop that, to turn our lives from fruitfulness to barrenness, from life to death, from fullness to emptiness, to being void. And that enemy is the enemy of God himself, and he is just attacking us because we belong to him. Even those who don't know him, because we're his creation. We're his creation. So the enemies of God are at work constantly to undo what God has said. Separate male from female. Separate life and turn it into death. What should be joyful is sorrow. What should be full is empty. So next week, we're going to go into the spiritual things, the spiritual weapons and tools that God has given us, and how he has demonstrated his mercy and his compassion for us when we struggle with not having the fruit of the womb, with infertility. We're not reproducing. And he has a mystery. He says, oh, there is a greater fertility I'm looking for from you, and a greater reproduction that I'm expecting from you if you will hear me and answer. So God bless you all. Thank you for your time, for your attention, your ear. I thank God for depositing in me over so many years his wisdom and his knowledge and his understanding. Depositing in me fruitfulness that is beyond the fruitfulness of the body, of the flesh. I gave birth to 2 children, but I am a mother of many, many, many children. And I am so grateful for every single one of them. So God bless you all. I'll see you next week. Let's see, how do we stop? leaving studio. Right?
Wait.